Germans tried to implement the Schlieffen plan, which they did improperly by making the hammer too strong, too weak, and the anvil too strong. So finally, it leads to both sides finding out that they can't win because they are losing too many troops and not gaining any ground. And then there's another thing that intervened, which is the Spanish flu, something which is not really man-made, and it was killing people almost as fast as the war, impartially both sides and even civilians. So for something very complex like that, can you say it is a black swan? And can we even consider something that consists from the actions of different human parties and also non-human factors a black swan?
Okay. Let me come back to the black swan and answer some questions about predictability and stuff all in one, because Talib. The first thing that's erroneous about using the term black swan, which is why I don't like that term, because there's no definition of the black swan that's objective. Black swan for a turkey is not a black swan for the butcher, you see? And my whole idea of a black swan is, I call it an epistemic effect. If you have a set of information, okay, for you it's not going to be, for the September 11, that one of those Wahhabi guys, all right, it was not a black swan, he was in a tower, but for people in a tower it was a black swan, you see? So you cannot define it that way based on information. But so that's the first one saying. Second point, we have ways, instead of to test, to measure sensitivity to model error, to small probabilities, to see if you're convex or concave to small probabilities. And that pretty much defines how you're going to fare if there's an unexpected event for that variable. Okay? So we don't have a definition of black swan that is objective, okay, because it's not an objective event. It depends on your expectation, but we have a very good measure of sensitivity to large deviations. Okay, now second point is very good about the Spanish flu, okay? The place where we have to worry the most is not so much is things that speed up and multiply, okay, and become systemic. I would think that the next Spanish flu, it may be Ebola, but the odds are no, because it doesn't have the right parameters. You have to have the parameters of Spanish flu. In other words, it should be highly infectious before killing you, but it shouldn't kill people too early nor too late. So, and there's that sweet spot, and if we hit something on that sweet spot, given that we pretty much have depleted, okay, our research in antibiotics, and we have a generation of people who are not good at handling, because they've had too many antibiotics when they didn't need it. I think that we have to worry enormously about something the equivalent of Spanish flu, you see? Because as you saw, it killed, how many? How many? Not 2 million, a lot more than 2 million people in Europe. It was ravaging. And of course, the Black Plague killed a third of Europe before that. So you have to worry with events of that class, you see. And today you have British Air transporting these things much faster than the Black Plague or the Spanish flu. You see, this is what we have to worry about. Now, the right people worry about the right thing, and there are mechanisms that are not very popular to counter that, namely you close your borders, you see? And we're learning from Ebola that people aren't very quick at reacting. And plus you have some idiots who estimate, oh, it's not going to be worse than 500,000. It's just like, how do you know it's not going to be worse than 500,000? The parameters, there's one thing about small probability that people don't understand. And let me say it here. Why is it unpriceable? You take any model that has prices small probability events, okay? You perturbate one parameter and see 1 in 10 million what would become of it. And you can easily see events that are 1 in 1 million, like Fukushima, turn out to be 1 in 30 from insignificant perturbations of parameters. You see? We have these events, and likewise, we have things that are robust. Epidemics, when you make epidemiological models of spreading, these are very often very sensitive to changes of parameters. So you have to not compute an estimate of how many people Ebola could kill, but rather focus on how quickly you are capable of closing your border. You see, and testing people coming in with zero, not zero, with very low, error rate. Okay, we can. I don't know how much more time we have, but
I think we have time for one more question, maybe. This gentleman here.
no, we're supposed to be an hour and a half. No, yeah. Sorry, we still have half an hour. Sorry, yeah.
Hi, Professor Talib. Thanks for your time.
Call me Nassim because Professor Talib is the one my trader friends call me when they want to make fun of me.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So.
Well, Nassim,
Yeah.
most governments and senior statesmen believe in a replacement rate of like 2.1 for every fertile woman. So with this view that demographics is destiny, so is this an example of insights of a practitioner or a fragile system where the population needs a replacement rate like this?
Okay, there's one or two things that are very interesting in that statement that correspond to MAP's second order effect, okay? One thing you learn from when you handle higher order effect, anti-fragile is a higher order effect, okay? If I tell you temperature is gonna be 22 degrees, okay, you're gonna pack, all right? If I tell you plus or minus 1 degree, you're gonna pack differently from if I tell you plus or minus 20 degrees. You see? You're gonna have a larger suitcase. And that's pretty much how I measure decision making based on second order effect. Is the size of the suitcase equivalent to when you travel, all right? Okay, now comes the fact that females today have 2.2, the sustainability that we've had over history is per mother 2.2. You agree? Okay. But how did that 2.2 come from? That was an average. You had a lot more progeny. You see? And who survived? 2.2 survived. Out of how many? 7, 8, 9, 10. So you had 10 offspring. 2.2 survived. You see? So you had a mechanism of evolution in place for generations to be more adapted to the surrounding generation after generation. Today, you no longer have that mechanism because all survive. So you only produce 2.2 children. You see? So this is the second order effect is lost. And nobody thought about it in these terms because you don't think in terms of volatility, you see? And that is a big problem. So I'm not worried about that the rate is below replacement. I'm not worried about that because we have overpopulation, it will dip and then it will rise. That's not the big deal. And it will take a lot of generations, all right, to start having a problem. And on the way down, it goes down, it geometrizes much more slowly than an explosive growth in population we've had. So that's not the big deal. The big deal is that you no longer have a mechanism, you see, of selection. And you don't want to have it. You don't want to lose children. I don't know anybody who had children, it's not fun, right? But you don't want to lose children. But at the same time, you should realize that we're no longer increasing in fitness to our environment because of that. Now, an interesting thing when I started talking about antifragility or fragility with biologists, they picked up very quickly that when you multiply your genes, all right, when you replicate your genes, you have an error rate, you see, and that error rate in replication there has some error rate, okay? There's a sweet spot, error rate. Those who have that variation that's favorable for the environment are going to do better than others. You agree? Okay. If that error rate is 0, you don't have any genetic fitness anymore. Okay? If that error rate is too high, you will have adaptation that are not conserved because you're likely to lose it again, you see? So you have to have a sweet spot of not too much error, not too little errors. And that incidentally can help in mapping, what you should do in business. You should have an error rate there, but not too high. Why anti-fragile is not openly anti-fragile. So I've answered your question and something along with it about an error rate in replication. More questions? Yes.
Yeah, I head on the center aisle.
The fellow there has a beard. It's okay, but he raised.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The question that I have is this, right? Fragility can fragility also mean right here, or anti-fragility also mean a combination not only of genes but also of memes? So the definition of fitness to survive might also include both genes and memes. Memes in the sense of what we call it, certain traits that add to the genes. Scientific methodology.
Okay. Let me stop now because I'm not able to answer the question because I'm not taking my idea into biology too far other than for...
No, I'm just saying that anti-fragility, like you stated that weakness right here, unfitness to survive, that we are selecting out what we call environmental stresses because of our higher standard of living. But I'm saying that fitness also should include memes that, say for example, scientific methodology, memes like antibiotics, memes like antivirals, memes like understanding epidemiology. Those also should be factored into anti-fragility as opposed to just, genes itself.
Okay, this I'm not sure because I didn't think about it, and whatever I don't think about, and I can't answer on the spot. But it's an interesting thing is whether our body of knowledge, what you call our body of knowledge, accumulated, has an evolutionary, like I was saying about religion, independently of population surviving it, or if it because ideas compete with each other. Okay, I have to think about it.
Thank you.
Another question.
Someone down the middle, maybe? On the left-hand side? Okay.
Hi. You mentioned that anti-fragility is harmed by lack of volatility.
Yes.
Is that a necessary feature?
It is necessary. I mean,
and
that
why?
trait, yes, okay. If your design, this is, I'm taking something very obvious. If something is made to communicate with the environment via stressors, okay, you upregulate some genes, you respond, okay, and you don't get these stressors, you're not getting the proper fitness to the environment. That's exactly what I meant. For example, let me give you an example. If you're made to walk, all right, or you're made to starve once in a while, and you don't walk and don't starve, there's something called diabetes, right, that develops, that tends to disappear during wars, like in the UK, and during the Second War, or in the recession in America, okay? So if you're supposed, so you're depriving someone of that variability of episodes of hunger is harming that person, okay? Just like a financial option is harmed if there's no volatility, right? It's the same effect. And you're not getting the right responses. The idea in anti-fragile, I show two models of things. And I call it the difference between the cat and a washing machine. Is that everything organic communicates via stressors because there's no central regulating system, okay? People have this idea that there's a central authority that decides on the economy, all that nonsense that you get in economic textbook. When in fact things that are organic are bottom up and have some kind of dynamics that are distributed, progressive, tinkering, small, and they probe the environment by small errors, okay? So a washing machine is never gonna improve if you take it for a walk, you see? So whereas my watch is not going to improve from usage, but my weightlifting is going to improve from usage, you see? And that's the main difference between organic and non-organic. And it was pretty obvious when you look at it in simple terms, and gets impossibly hard if you take a class in macroeconomics or some kind of something even more stupid than microeconomics, something called whatever. I mean, these classes people take, it makes people start thinking of the economy as something that we have to monitor, manage, and predict and stuff like that. Whereas if you look at the property of complex system, it's completely different, you see? So this is where, without a stressor, an economy is not going to improve. Because without a business cycle, a natural business cycle, what does a business cycle do? Is it makes those who need to fail early, okay? They fail early and then go become professors and it's harmless, it's great, all right? But if you let them fail too late, what would happen? Exactly what we had in America under Greenspan. If you fail too late, you have a lot of accumulated risks on the books, so it becomes very hard. So this is why so the organic likes fluctuation and communicates with the environment and improve via stressors. Incidentally, while writing this book, the one before the last, my real book is, of course, Silent Risk, available for free on the web, but incomprehensible because it's highly mathematical. When writing Antifragile, I discovered something called post-traumatic growth. And I said, okay, flashed. Anecdotally, I benefited from it. I had the war in Lebanon, and all my generation from Lebanon, okay, did very well. I'm not saying 99%, I'm saying 100%. Okay, so all the people from they went overseas from my class, all right? So there has to be something about post-traumatic growth, sort of like all city-states. Most of them do very well because they're forced to trade, all right? So I realized, I looked at literature, and effectively it's measurable, it exists, it is prevalent. But nobody talks about post-traumatic growth. People are worried about post-traumatic disorder. Why? Well, because we live in a society where we think we're going to fix everything ourselves, was part of it. But the second one is nobody's going to make money trying to cure you of post-traumatic growth. You see? So this is the idea. You think that you need a doctor for remedies, all right? And then you think that you start pathologizing the world, the condition, not realizing that the same thing can lead to much more dominant and much more necessary reverse outcome. A little bit of stressor in your life.
Yes, I believe.
Hi, Professor. Hi, sorry.
He's asking me how, I can't talk about my private life for one reason, all right?
Mike Tyson.
I'll have to lie like everyone, you see.
I think we can move on to the gentleman.
But I'm going to make a
Okay,
statement.
okay.
Someone asked me about my private life and the thing. Other members, my own, okay, but I'm saying how should one, try to avoid being a sucker mom, but it's hard. In other words, children need time to get bored. Do nothing, absolutely nothing, right? Go walk around, get bored. And now they have a schedule of an chief executive, 9 o'clock tennis, 9:45 yoga. It doesn't work that way in life, right? You need to go and counter the elements and have things come and have periods. So this is why, but the problem is in modern life, we're forced for competitive purpose, if you wanted children to go to an Ivy League school to start playing a game, of putting them through 9:45 yoga, 10 o'clock this, and 2:45 that, and then theater this, and music and piano. So it messes them up, okay? So that's the other thing. I myself follow the following criterion. You should tell you, the problem is education. We have this illusion that education is good. If you're rich, don't educate your children too much. Let them educate themselves. Why? Because the purpose of education, we have evidence, isn't to improve the GDP of a country, but to stabilize the income of families. So education, the only purpose of education is if you want your children to do better in life, that have a lower variance in outcomes. But at the level of a country, the most dangerous thing is too high a degree of education, not apprenticeship. What does it do? It moves people away from risk-taking, the trial and error, at the age when they start taking risks, all right? I wanted to be a trader at age 22 and a half. Had I done a PhD, all right, now I'd be lecturing you on value at risk, all right? So, or now I'd be lecturing on 2 people, would be, or 0, or you get the idea, all right? So I was forced to take risks, okay, and at a young age, and of course, and now, anecdotally, let's look at Larry Ellison, who started this firm, college dropout. Bill Gates, college dropout. Mark Zuckerberg, college dropout. The guy from Apple, college dropout, okay? So you think of these guys, if they were forced to stay in college, they would have ended up getting Harvard MBAs and working for McKinsey, right? or some law firm. You get the idea? So this is not what, what you need in a country. And now the evidence, everybody looks at GDP of countries, and they tell you, look at Norway has high GDP, high education. Hence, let's increase education, you increase GDP. Does it work that way? No. England was uneducated, all right, swashbucklers who took a lot of risk, moved up. Even scientific discovery goes down with education. True scientific discovery, not writing papers read by some academics to give you points. So what happened is that because scientific discovery is just risk-taking. What happened is that, like Korea, they got very wealthy, and then education went up. So it's very efficient at the level of a family to educate your children, because you know they're going to be locked up at least in the middle class, no worse than middle class. But at the level of the country as a whole, all right, but think about it. If your child becomes a lawyer, he's not producing. You're right? He's not innovating. If your child becomes, with all respect to lawyers, it's necessary, but like, you need more entrepreneurs and fewer lawyers, no? You need more entrepreneurs and fewer consultants. You need more entrepreneurs and you see the idea. Someone got to pay the bills, all right? So these things are inhibited. Commerce is inhibited by that. And you can see it, actually, even some communities, like Syrian Jews in the United States, have explicitly turned down education as a mode of transmission of knowledge. And I mean, they fared phenomenally well. And their idea is not that, okay, now I'm talking about formal education. I'm not talking about education. Now, education is something you get in a cafe, talking to people. I'm talking about these degrees that you get. All right. There's another thing connected to antifragile, which is that this illusion that science leads to technology. So read the definition now, or any time you Google something, Google technology and look at definition. It says it's the application of scientific techniques to real life. BS, all right? Technology generates science and not the reverse. I call it lecturing birds how to fly. The problem is, who writes the books? When you lecture birds how to fly, and then look, you know, they need me to lecture. The ones who lecture write the books. The birds don't write books on flying, all right? So we have that illusion, okay? But look at successful places like Italy, successful intergenerational communities who have been producing stuff for long term. Apprenticeship is the way things go at work, where you discover, and then we have a lot more evidence that technology drives science and not the reverse. And stuff, and a lot of things that we think were discovered by scientists, in fact, it's more likely that a scientific person wrote a book. Like the jet engine, it was figured out by not very analytical engineers, and they knew how to make it work, and then the credit went to those who wrote the papers. And then the engineers don't write the papers. So we discovered in almost every domain, it's even you think now, this is built by Euclidean geometry, you see? This is why this is not natural, doesn't have the variation, it's not fractal. You see, man-made stuff harm you and may harm your eyes. Look how geometric it is, all right? Have you seen a cathedral the way it was built before? Much richer. And go to Rome, there's not a piece of wall that's smooth, that's not full of dimensionality, variations, okay? More like nature. They never, even the low-income housing in Ostia, they have things. They have not smooth, okay. How did the Romans build buildings? How did the French build cathedrals? Did they know Euclidean geometry? Without the Arabic numerals, you can't do mathematics. Mathematics, it was a form of entertainment for unemployed, rich Greek aristocrats. That was mathematics. It had no other purpose in life, all right? Engineers, people had to do something, didn't use mathematics. So what we think now, but now reading that all these things came from knowledge of Euclidean theorems. Nobody cared. These people know how to build pyramids, everything, without these theorems. You see the idea? And as a matter of fact, we did them better. But it's very interesting. The only criticism I have of Singapore is that I was driving from my hotel and I had like a huge amount of relief when I saw the Raffles Hotel. And it was why did I have that relief? I saw dimensionality in the building. You see? Because if you don't have dimensionality, it's the same thing, antifragile. It's like eating all your meals in even quantities, not having the variation. Okay, and your eyes need variation. Find a place in nature that's smooth like this wall. You don't have anything smooth in nature, you see. Nature has the fractal geometry. So maybe the next generation, you should have fractal buildings, which effectively are not Euclidean. The dimensionality, actually, the only place you find it now in modern architecture is Gaudi in Barcelona. Highly fractal buildings from the inside where you feel you've been there because it's like a cave. But this is not just a problem here. Look in New York City. You can tell the age of the building, if it's pre-war or not, or by how much useless energy they put in the wall. You see? If it's smooth, okay, very, very smooth is built now by some rich architect who doesn't live in the building, all right? So but if it's variegated, the more variegated, the more it is like it comes from last century or early 20th century, late other centuries. That's the problem with progress, is that it's making us take things like this.
Okay, I believe I have one gentleman in the audience.
Hi, Professor. I have a question. So when it comes to design of interventions in complex systems, how do we do so in a way that increases the system to be, increases the anti-fragility of the system?
That's an excellent question when it comes to intervention. You remember early on I said that only economists figured out that risk equals variability, you see? That effectively risk is not variability, all right? You agree that? Okay, so the way to intervene is, this is